So this was discovered by Jinjenia over the past couple days, day. Um, Pretty much. Normally in the run, we have to cover slide from not yeah we have to cover slide from. I'll show you on the map. We have to cover slide from Vault 111 down to Fort Hagen, which is very shoddy. So we run from Diamond City here. We run southwest to Rocky Cave to set up our load warp. And along the way we set up a cover slide at the Crater of Adam. And it's actually like right it's like right before it. It's like right around here. Actually here. So then what we do then is we fast travel to Lexington right here to get our power armor. And then we fast travel to Vault 111 and we cover slide down the left edge of the map here to Fort Hagen. And this cover slide is actually very, very inconsistent, right? Very inconsistent. And for a long time, we've discussed the potential to skip that cover slide because that's like if you get past the Kellogg slide, then you have a run. Then you have a run on your hands. It's very inconsistent and it's actually a huge run killer. It kills so many good runs because it's like at around the 25-minute mark ish. It's like in the 20-30 minute range, which is like right when it's like the midpoint of the run. And if you get past that, you have a run on your hands. So we've always talked about skipping that, right? So let's talk about punch warps and cover slides because it's been a while. So punch warps. Typically, when you go to melee attack something in VATS, so say we have this frag mine, and we go to melee attack it. So if I'm standing right here and I go to melee attack it, I'm too far to melee attack it. So that means if I attack it in VATS, I'm not just going to stand here and swing my baton and hit it. No, the game teleports me to next to it. See how I am now within range? I don't want to actually hit it. See how I'm actually within range now? It's because it teleports you. The game did pathfinding for me to get me here. Like, once I confirm my attack, the game says, okay, we need to put him next to the frag mine so we can actually hit it. How do we get him there? And then it pathfinds. So a punch warp is when we pretty much do the same thing, but like we do a regular VATS attack, but we put the frag mine into a position where it makes it difficult for the game to tell how to get us to it. So like maybe in here it'll work. Yeah, okay, so I just set up a punch warp because here, I'll show you what it does real quick. So now I'm over here. That's a punch warp. So because it's in this car right there, the game has a hard time trying to figure out how to put me so close that I can attack that mine and I'm not inside of an object, because there's a couple, as far as we can tell, there's a couple criteria for pathfinding. Like, it can't put you out of bounds, it can't put you inside objects, and other things along those lines. So because this is so nestled inside of a small space, the game has a hard time thinking about how it's going to get me there without putting me out of bounds or inside of an object. So what we do then is, while the game is still thinking, after we confirm our attack, we cancel. So right here, I just cancel. So I've now set up a punch warp to right here. It's pretty much storing where I was standing when I attempted to do the VATS attack. So now the next time I go to do a melee attack something in VATS, I get teleported back to where I set up the punch warp. So see, now I'm over here. So we use this. If we set up one, say at the castle, right? And then we went up to Grey Garden and we triggered our punch warp, we would then teleport. We don't slide, we teleport from Grey Garden. Well, it kind of is a slide, actually. It's like a chunked, it's like pretty much a teleport, but you don't go the whole way, you go in chunks. So like you'll teleport to here, then here, then here. It's like not necessarily a slide per se. You can go through objects. So it's kind of a teleport. That's why we call it punch warping as opposed to punch sliding. Anyways, I digress. We use it to get across the map very quickly. And it's hard to get to Fort Hagen because what you can do is, like, you can fast travel to an inside location. So say I go inside the Museum of Freedom, right? Say I go inside the Museum of Freedom and I were to set up a punch warp. So say I set up a punch warp like in this corner or something, right? which for some reason I'm not able to do. Oh, I should be able to do it like that. Oh, never mind. Anyways, say I set up one right here. Well, now if I were to go over to Rocky Narrows Park and trigger my punch warp, I'm not going to cover slide. I'm not going to punch warp up to the Museum of Freedom, even though that's where I set it up. I'm going to punch warp to the coordinates of where I am standing, like right now when I would set it up, but in the overworld. So it's going to be somewhere in the middle of the map, near the middle of the map. So that's just kind of how punch warps work in general. But digressing again, it's very difficult to punch warp to Fort Hagen and skip that cover slide I talked about earlier, because of the fact that Fort Hagen is just kind of in an odd spot on the map. It's not near the middle, so we can't set up a punch warp inside of a building to punch warp to it, because the coordinates don't really line up. And in order to punch warp to Fort Hagen and not set it up inside of a building, we have to set it up at Fort Hagen. But Jinjenia found a setup where if you set up your punch warp up here at the Museum of Freedom, right over here, like in this corner, and then we go down to the bottom left corner of the map, like normal, like what we did normally with the cover slide, and you set it up at, you trigger it at the Creator of Adam. Then remember how I talked about the punch warp triggered in chunks? Like it will teleport you to here, then like there. If you mash M to pull up your Pip-Boy while you're going through your punch warp, you'll pull it up and cancel the punch warp midway through it. So then you'll stop your punch warp right at around, it'll be like, it's right around here-ish. It stops your punch warp. So right there you skip the cover slide. So you may be asking, is this faster? Not faster, but it's 100% consistent, right? That's the really good thing, is it's slightly slower, but it's very consistent. So before, we would have to always do the cover slide, which is super inconsistent, but it was decently fast. But now we have to do this, albeit a little bit longer of a setup, but we get it every time, and we land relatively near to Fort Hagen. So where is this one faster? Where is this strat faster, and where is this strat slower? So this strat is faster in the sense that you don't have to deal with power armor. We actually can ditch our power armor right away. Like, we only need it to cover slide to Lexington early on. So we can ditch the power armor. We don't have to go and get in that and everything like that. So we can skip that. It saves time there. But you lose time going to set up the punch warp and fast traveling to Crater of Adam and loading old saves. Also, you lose time based on the fact that you don't land right next to Fort Hagen and you have to run to it, which if you get a good cover slide, you land right at where you need to go. That's a pretty lucky cover slide, though. You also save time with this new strat, though, because you don't need to fast travel to Lexington and Vault 111. So there's a couple things that wash out. They like kind of cancel each other out. But overall, this seems slightly slower. But that's the punch warping portion of it. So there's a second part of it, though. I want to make sure I don't have a punch warp set up. There we go. Okay. There's a second part of it, though, and that is the cover slide. So I just set up that punch warp. So a cover slide. This is a cover slide. It looks kind of similar. It's a slingshot, pretty much. So normally you have this cover animation, right? You aim around the corner, and the game really, the patch that we play on, we're playing on patch, I'm not sure, yeah, 1.1.30, right there. This patch, the animation to re-enter the cover is broken, and it's broken in the sense that if you cancel the aiming around cover before the game has a chance to do that animation, the game says, yo, you need to fucking finish that animation. So then the next time you go into first person with your gun out, you slingshot back to where you were going to complete that animation. And it's very similar properties to a punch warp where it deals with coordinates. So if I set it up inside of a building and I went outside and I triggered it, I would like go swinging that way towards the middle of the map. That's just how it works. But still very good to have. It's the same thing as a punch warp, except you actually travel across the whole way. You get slingshotted for the distance. So we can kind of utilize them in pairing to try and make this strat faster than the old one. It's not going to be. It's going to be very close, but pretty much this is where we're going to trigger our punch warp from. And you set up a cover slide also. You also set up a cover slide right here. You can have punch warps and cover slides set up at the same time. So come on. There we go. So I have a cover slide set up. So the next time I enter first person with my gun out, I'll get slingshotted back to there. Let me pull out the baton. I'm going to trigger my punch warp and try to do the map thing. Alright, so here I am right here. This is, now we're at pretty much at Fort Hagen, which is good. And now I have to run to Fort Hagen, which is, I have to run to Fort Hagen, which is right here. And ideally, we want to just be right there. We want to be right on it. But what we can do is we have a cover slide set up down here, so we can use it in chunks to kind of spit ourselves up to Fort Hagen. So that's what this is right here. Let me pull up the gun again. There we go. You pull up the... shit. You pretty much have to just use your cover slide in chunks to get really close to Fort Hagen, and then you're here. So that's pretty much a method to attempt to minimize the amount of running that we have to do, which also makes this strat a lot more comparable to the old strat of just cover sliding straight to it. So that's kind of like the new stuff that we're working on with the route and kind of testing, because there might be other applications to this. We might be able to set up, like, say, a punch warp inside of the vault and then cancel it on our way to the middle of the map and end up in Lexington, stuff like that, you know. I agree, Jinjenia. This is definitely the way to do the route. One, if you're doing it in a marathon, because it's really cool to look at, and two, probably it's the way people should learn the route now, because it's slightly slower, but it's way more consistent, and it won't be as discouraging for people who are learning the run, who keep losing runs at the Kellogg cover slide, because the Kellogg cover slide is very inconsistent, and it's actually something that you have to get decent at. It's, believe it or not, there is a bit of skill to doing the Kellogg cover slide. You have to, like, get good at the timing and everything like that, and knowing where you are. So that completely eliminates that, and it helps out a shit ton with new runners. So this is definitely good for the Fallout 4 speedrunning community, because it just is helpful all around. Yeah, the overall goal is to remove all cover slides. Cover slides are the devil. So if we can remove all cover slides, Fallout 4 speedrunning will be in a good place.